And I got up there and I like metaphorically shat myself. It was one of the worst live experiences as a musician I've ever had. The way that I decided to push through it was I decided on stage I'm going to put on a character. Because if I put on a character, people aren't judging you, they're judging the character that you're playing.
How much of what you say is the content coming out of your mouth versus the way that you say it in terms of building trust with the layman? Because when you're the person that you're educating, they don't have any knowledge. So how do they exactly know what you're saying is right or wrong? How much do you think starts with the way you say it?
I think it's a huge part. I think it's what gets you to the table, and I think it's what keeps people at the table. Communication is really important. And like when we were driving here, I was speaking about how I started doing this degree and then I changed because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And the first degree I did was the first year they offered it at Curtin, it was like mass communications. So you did a bit of marketing, a bit of PR. I can't remember everything else you did, but a bit of advertising, all kind of different stuff. And you realize in terms of like not just like making sure that if you're writing something, it's grammatically correct, that's important for professionalism, but you realize how important communication is because we make so many split-second judgments, which it's not a bad thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with judging people, there's nothing wrong with judging a book by its cover because a lot of the time the cover does reflect what's in the book. So when I was first doing music, so I was a drummer for the first 5-6 years I was doing live music. And then I got the opportunity to join a band as a vocalist. And it was with my best friend at the time, who was also a drummer. So I didn't think we'd ever be able to be in a band together. And he was like, hey, our vocalist quit. We're flying to Sydney. We were in Perth at the time, to record an album tomorrow. Can you come and record the vocals? And I was like, hell yeah. I'm like 17. I don't have anything else to do. And so we got up and we did our first show ever. And I reckon I could probably find the footage somewhere, but it was for the launch of when, so growing up, we had channel 7, 9, and 10 in Australia. And then they launched like that channel Go. Like it was when they, yeah. So for the launch of channel Go, they did a live concert at the Fremantle prison. It was sick. They put a stage into one of the old historical buildings. And it was my first show as a singer. And I had in my head that like, when I got up on stage, I was going to be this like really cool front man, like this amalgamation of all these different singers that I loved growing up. And I got up there and I like metaphorically shat myself. I was just terrified because when you're a drummer, because of the lights, you can't see past the front of the stage. So it doesn't matter if there's 2 people or 100 people. You're just kind of like vibing with your friends on stage. You're in the pocket. It's cool. When you get up to the front of the stage, there's no barrier between you and the crowd. And it's not just the crowd. It's the girl you like, your parents, all your friends from school, a whole bunch of people who were just looking at you. And it was one of the worst live experiences as a musician I've ever had because I was just terrified. And for like the 5, 6, 7, 8 shows after that, it was the same. Like it was, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like I'm too nervous. I'm too vulnerable. It was scary. It wasn't fun. I didn't know that all the bands that I'd grown up watching had done it 1,000 times. So I wanted to quit. And the way that I decided to push through it was I decided on stage I'm going to put on a character. Because if I put on a character, kind of like if you're an actor and you're doing a play and you get up and give a performance, people aren't judging you, they're judging the character that you're playing. So I'm like, I'm going to put on this character. And the character that I put on was like, I'd wear like a bit of eyeliner on stage, like I'd dress kind of more over the top of what I'd usually wear. And that way I created this distinction between my stage persona and who I was personally. So that way I didn't feel like people were judging me, they were judging the character of my performance. So in this work, I don't put on a character now, but when I first started doing this work and giving presentations, I basically created this persona of someone who I would respect if they were speaking. So I just played up those parts of who I was. I dressed, put on a button-up shirt. I spoke very formally. And then over time, just like in music, the stage persona that I'd created for myself kind of just, I became more like him and he became more like me. And now when I speak, and for the last 3-4 years I've been doing this, I've gotten to the point where I can just authentically show up as myself and speak to you now how we spoke in the car or how we'd speak at dinner tonight, because it just naturally evolved into being one of the same thing. But when people see like if I'm speaking confidently in front of a camera and doing a podcast or something like this, I did live Q&As in a Facebook group 3 times a week for like 5 years. So like I have answered so many questions off the cuff, no preparation. I've probably done multiple thousand Q&As. So this is just like getting coffee.
Wow.
Like there's no elevated heart rate, there's no nervousness, because it's just become the point where this is just authentic. And I think that people like authenticity when it comes through, but it takes a long time to get to the point that you can do that.
That is super interesting, because every time before a podcast, especially in person, I've got that elevated heart rate. I'm nervous now. It's going to take me time to warm up. I'm going to need to get lubricated first for the first 30 minutes.
Yeah.
With you, you're a lot easier than a lot of people, because you're just that sort of person that's so self-aware. You can read the room. You know how to make people feel comfortable. But others, where I'm interviewing them, they're a little bit more difficult to get through. Bro, it takes me 30 minutes because I'm a bit like stuttering, and it just comes across when I view it as that's amateur.
Yeah.
Whereas you've hit professional status now. Definitely.
Yeah, and it's just like in music we say, like, you know, if you practice for 1,000 hours, you'll master your craft. And I was just very conscious when I first started doing this that I didn't want to put stuff out online and put out this professionally until I'd done 1,000 hours, which is why I spent so many years, like as we were saying in the car on the way in, like I just did consultations and calls and then like Q&As in private groups on Facebook for years before I put anything out publicly, because I was like, I want to be so comfortable with what I'm putting out that, and I still, for big podcasts with people who I'm like, holy shit, like this person's, you know, taking the time to speak to me, like this is massive. Like I'll definitely get a little bit nervous, but it's like a fractional thing compared to what it was before. But it's truly just from, it's like exposure therapy that they talk about when, you know, there's any kind of anxiety or nervousness. Is like, if you just do it, if you do it 1,000 times, that goes away.
Wow. Man, that's a good kind of way to intro the podcast. Even though we don't have a theme or a topic today, I figured we've been speaking a lot lately about the whole, I don't know what other word to use, but this masculinity trend, or how to be a man trend. So we'll stay on that topic for now, and where we go, we go. But after being able to speak, I've focused a lot on fashion lately, like I said in the car. And one of my biggest regrets, if not the biggest regret, is having face tattoos. And in some ways, it's why I quit the podcast, because I felt that having the face tattoos for me was such a big kind of hurdle or pit stop. Just like a line that I just couldn't get over, because how you look, it's so important, bro, to the point where I know so many people that come on my YouTube channel or even inbox me and they just say, man, the face tattoos though. Yeah. Like it's a lot for me to get over. Like I could if I was really talented or something, but it's been so much to get over that I've just kind of given up, if you will. So if you could speak about fashion, right, not as extreme as having face tattoos, but how much does it matter, and how many people out there can you see with potential and you're just like, bro, change your fashion?
Yeah, fashion's interesting because, so as we were saying when we set up, like so both my grandfathers were colorblind, and I don't know if that means that I got like a double colorblindness or if I just got like a severe form of from one or the other. I haven't looked into it, but when I was a kid, it was when I remember distinctly those black and white checkered Vans came out, like the shoes, the slip-on Van shoes. And in the punk rock music space, that was like, that instantly just went to being like, that's the look, that's the thing. So in Perth, they were sold out like everywhere. And I found this one store in Fremantle that had a whole bunch. And I was like, wow, cool, I'm going to get like, I think they were like 60, 70 bucks at the time. And, you know, being in high school, that's a lot of money. So my dad had given me the money to get them. So I got them and I was so excited that like, I was like, I want to wear them home. And I got home and I just walk in the door and my dad's like, why are you wearing pink shoes? And I was like, what do you mean? So I bought the black and pink checkered ones because no one had bought them. That's why they had so many. And I was like, that makes everything just light bulb moment. So since then, I've only worn black. Whether that's a maladaptive trauma response, whatever, I've only ever worn black. And one of the reasons is I can't match color. But when it comes to how you dress professionally, I think there's a bit of like a dichotomy, because one thing is that I think it's important to have a visual aesthetic that identifies who you are if you're trying to build a brand. If you come on one day wearing a suit and then come on another day wearing gym clothes, making a piece of content, unless you're creating a brand that's about the amalgamation of the two things, it doesn't make any sense. And people will see that as disorganized. And for people who don't know, my undergrad's in marketing. Everything that we do when we're building a personal brand online is marketing. How you speak, how you do your titles, like everything that you do and you put out shapes people's perception of who you are and what you have to offer. And again, going back to the music thing, so I used to run the bookings for a music venue in Leaderville in Perth called HQ, which was like a skate park that underage bands would come and play at, and they'd get like their first gigs. It was awesome. I don't know if it's still going. I hope it is. And so we'd run like 2 shows a week. So there'd be 10 bands that would come through per week. So I'd log into my email and have like 20, 30 bands being like, hey, I want to play a show, And they'd all send me their demos. I didn't listen to a single demo. I based who got the show off how they worded the email they sent me. And it was based on the fact that if you didn't spell check your email and you didn't like format it in a way that was at least semi-professional, I couldn't trust the fact that you're going to rock up on time. I couldn't trust the fact that you were going to load in, because we had 15-minute load-ins between bands. So you have 15 minutes to get all your equipment off the stage and then all the next band's equipment on the stage, sound check it and start playing. That's tight. That has to be like clockwork. So we had a really good, sound engineer who did that and staff who helped it run through. But, bands would rock up drunk and rock up late, and it would be really difficult to work with. And I very quickly found that there was a correlation between how well they worded their initial email and how well they came and actually performed on the day, not on stage, because I didn't care how good they were. This was their first show. Like, generally, if a band, and again, we weren't trying to make money, we were just trying to break even. It was a government-funded initiative. But if it's your first show, all your friends are coming, all your friends from school are coming, all your family's coming, your parents are coming. So a terrible band would pack out a room. But I was less interested in how well you performed on stage. I was more interested in how well you performed off stage. That was really important. So how you do one thing is how you do everything, and people perceive that whether you like it or not and whether they're aware of it or not. So if you're running any kind of brand, how you dress, how you groom yourself, how you communicate, everything is so important in the level of professionalism that you're trying to put across. And how you physically dress is a big factor for that. And I've got a certain way that I like to dress because I got to a point just like you. I mean, I've got tattoos, I've got a big beard, I look kind of like people say I look like a bikie in Australia. And I'm totally okay with that because, I lost my hair when I was very young. I got into this space and I was like, I can play into my strengths that I have genetically and the look that I have, and create a brand for me that was based on maybe something that looked a little bit rough around the edges, maybe embodied physically traits of traditional masculinity, but also very well spoken. And I think the juxtaposition between how I word science in a way that people can understand compared with, I guess that's what I'm trying to communicate in the way that I dress and the way that I look, is that I am able to communicate very difficult, complex topics in a way that people can understand. And I think that juxtaposition between a bit more of a edgy look or like a non-traditional medical look with a very professional, high-level medical, or not medical, but scientific discourse and what I'm talking about, I think that creates something that's memorable and something that stands out from the noise. So I think my best piece of branding advice for people, and I can only say what's worked for me, and there might be other theories that, there's other approaches, and that might work for some people, but you play your strengths. And if you be authentically you and you be good at being you, people will respond well to that, because people like people. People don't like brands. People like people. And ultimately, if you're going from first interaction, cold traffic, to working with someone, conversion, whatever that is, them buying from you, them working with you, them having your service, whatever, that process going from A to B is a trust-based interaction. So the more professionally you can communicate yourself authentically, the better. But I also got to the point, as we were saying before, from when I was 5 years old to when I was 17, I had to go to a private school and wear a tie and wear a uniform that I hated, like Scotch College in Perth, like khaki button-up shirt with a red tartan tie and shorts and socks pulled up. Like every single day I put on that uniform being like, I hate this. I hate how it looks. I hate how it feels. I hate everything about it. So when I left school, I was like, I want to, ideally, in a perfect world, if the stars align and I work hard, I want to be able to go through life dressing the way that I want to dress and looking the way that I want to look. And that's what I've done. And it's worked.
I would say for people that haven't found their niche yet, is it important to stay neutral somewhat? Because although you have the beard and you've got the bikey look, I would still say the fashion is very neutral. It's all black. There's no fancy colors going out anywhere. As a framework, it's universally professional, the way that you dress. So what I was getting at was these kind of ticks or these checklists that men should have, even before they even consider opening their mouth. I just see so many men without them. It's like the car's dirty, or it's a strange car. It's not a neutral color. They've picked like, I don't know, yellow or something. Same with the clothes. How much of this kind of nuance or stuff that people consider not important, how much do you think that's like a deal breaker for people with women, with business?
My first car was a yellow Holden Cruise. So I can definitely attest to this, because when I got my first car, like I was never into cars, which is ironic because all my analogies now are about cars. I still don't understand cars. But when I got my first car, I was like, it doesn't matter what kind of car you drive. And I am 100% sure that a whole bunch of first dates that I went on, a whole bunch of job interviews that I rocked up to, I was already disqualified just from the vehicle that I arrived in. At the time, I would have thought that was judgmental, that was this, that was that was a negative reflection on them. It wasn't. It was just the way that things work. And I think when I kind of raised the level that I consider young as I get older. So now that I'm 32, I say that 30s is young, just as a cope. But when I don't think men become adults until we're 30. I don't know anything about women, but I don't think men become adults until we're 30. So I think that when you're like 18 to 30, you're just basically like an adolescent that has the rights to be able to, drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes and drive and get tattoos and do what you want to do. But there's so much maturing that happens during that period of your life. And you generally don't become aware of it until you look back on it with hindsight. And you're like, I didn't know anything when I was 25. I thought I knew everything, but I didn't know anything. So I think that's one thing that you learn as you go through life, is that the world is the way that it is. And the more you learn about, and I think a lot of people fixate on being like, oh, this sucks about the way the world works, and this sucks about the way that the world works. But you got to play the game. You got to play the ball where it lands, because none of that's going to change. So I think the people who do well are people who adapt. And I think that's one of the most important skills you can have in life. And just because you don't like the way something is doesn't mean that you can avoid it necessarily. And I'd say that I spent, probably 18 to 25 in denial about that, and learned the hard way and didn't really get anywhere. And it wasn't until I adapted in a way that I could still find that balance of authenticity, but also still recognize the game for what it was and play it, I was able to build a life that I genuinely enjoyed living, despite those limitations, so to speak.
Daily injections are ideal because this gives you ultra stable testosterone levels. If you can really frequently administer something with a very long half-life, you can keep your levels super, super stable. And I think that this is the most beneficial way to do TRT. However, how should TRT be administered? So TRT should be administered as frequently as possible to mimic natural production as closely as possible, to prevent supraphysiological peaks or low troughs with deficient androgen.